Welcome to Flamingos Right Now. The Flamingos is a group, or a flamboyance, of friends who love to write and love to critique. The best part is sometimes some of us agree and sometimes we don't, because we all bring our own perspectives to a reading and to a question. In this podcast series, we share our perspectives on writing through questions that we receive at flamingosrightnow@gmail.com. I'm Wendy Kendall. I write cozy mysteries. My first book, Cat Out of the Bag, Cat with a K, was published this year, and I'm very excited to have it out and available.
Hi, I'm Avis, and I'm an English instructor and a writer with one book of poetry published, Quill Scene, published in 2019 by Finishing Line Press, and a YA novel with a publishing editor. Carl?
Yes, my name is Carl Lee. I write paranormal fantasy. My book, Selfies, is also currently under consideration by a publisher.
Hi, I'm Catherine Brown. I am a writer of published and award-winning short stories and flash fiction, and I'm working on a YA fantasy novel.
Hi, my name is Melanie McDonald, and I'm a retired criminal defense attorney, and I write mystery thrillers about women who kill and the men who drive them to it.
Our question today, what do you put on page 1 of a book, or as close to the start as you can? I feel the priority on page 1 is the hook. You want to have starting sentences that hook the interest of your reader. To do that, you need to identify and understand your target audience. All books are not for all people, and no book is for all readers. So you can start your first page when you identify who you're writing for and what they want in the books that they read. What will hook your reader's interest? You don't want to disappoint your readers by giving them a story that doesn't meet their expectations. One method to identify your readers, if you're not sure, is to think, where on a brick and mortar bookstore shelf will your book sit? Next to what other authors' books? And who reads those books? A reader is not too invested in a book on page 1. They've not yet spent time or emotion on the story. As they start chapter 1, it's very easy for them to lose interest and put it down. You need to hook them on page 1, and then on the following pages, keep them hooked and reading. Along with the hook, I think page 1 should also introduce these other essentials: who, what, when, where, why. Let your reader hear the voice from whom the point of view of the story is going to be told, or one of the primary point of view characters if your story has multiple. Give them a clue about this character they're hearing from. Your characters will take a personal journey in your story. Suggest the starting point of the protagonist's journey, also known as their character arc. Show the setting where the first scene takes place. That includes a sense of time as well as environment. The reader wants to know where they are. Show or even state the overarching theme of your story. What is the universal question or debate that is the reason why this story is interesting and worth reading? I write cozy mysteries. My new book, Cat Out of the Bag, introduces Catherine Watson as amateur sleuth and international purse designer. She's in the first paragraph. Readers of cozy mysteries love to analyze suspects and clues and investigate the mystery so they can try to solve who did it and why before the sleuth. These readers' primary interest is analyzing human nature and puzzle solving. So, in my book, the mystery starts right on page 1 with a crime scene. Readers are immediately hooked as they read for clues and suspects. They have the whole rest of the book to analyze this crime scene and more clues and suspects later in the story, which is what they enjoy doing most. Avis, what do you think about page 1?
Thank you, Wendy, and really great response. One thing I'm always trying to do as a writer is write that perfect first line that will make it into the list of 100 best first lines ever. Think, where's Papa going with that axe? Or call me Ishmael. So like Wendy said, you want to deliver the hook and what the protagonist wants. And as Jessica Brody says, wants are different than needs. So in Charlotte's Web, when Fern asks where her dad is going with an axe, she knows the answer. But at 8 years old, she needs it confirmed. And then she sets out trying to save the pig. The funny thing about Charlotte's Web is that the protagonist is actually Wilbur the pig, not Fern. So it's a little deceptive, but the book begins with a bang and captures our sympathy and our attention and introduces the family, but not all of the characters. Don't do that on the first page. So this should tell you that each author, while following the same guidelines for opening scenes and exposition, uses them to suit their needs for their own story. And the first page provides setting, characterization, and a problem. First pages are also important because they are what editors and agents read first. So the first page is something you revisit time and again as you revise and edit your novel. Working it through your critique group will help you find the things that you miss. Critique groups are so important. So make sure the grammar and mechanics are perfect on that first page. The first line grabs the reader, the protagonist's voice is clear, the desire of the protagonist is clear, even though it might change by chapter 2, and we know where we are in an active setting. So Carl, do you have notes? I bet you do.
Thanks, Avis. I do have notes. Yes, you have to pull your reader in on the first page or two. You do this by introducing at least one of your central characters. Now, Avis, you mentioned the protagonist. It may not be the protagonist in the first chapter on the first page. It may be one of the prominent ancillary characters, but they have to be a significant character. They have to have a significant role in the novel, and they have to be in a significant setting. The location that this first character arrives in is frequently either a direct mirror of the last scene, or possibly a less direct mirror. A stuffy office versus a cozy home office would be a kind of a fuzzy second fuzzy mirror image in the final scene for a uptight business person in the first scene to show the character has moved on. One more thing you need on the first page, if you don't have the problem stated out right clearly in the first page or two, you have to have at least a hint that something's going to happen, because nobody is going to want to read the autobiography of a fictional police detective. Hey, Catherine, what do you think?
Well, I love the technique you described, Carl, of writing the opening scene to mirror the final scene. It brings the novel full circle, and when it's done well, your opening image will set the whole mood for the story, and it can help you define your character arc, how your character is changing from the beginning to the end. And the hook and the 5 essentials that Wendy mentioned are a great way to get your hook started with a bang. But how do you get that hook? I think it's by adding tension, such as conflict, the antagonist, or a unique setting that sets a foreboding mood. The presence of tension is going to get your reader to turn the page. It gets them to ask the all-important question of what is next, and to want that answer badly. I do want to make another point, though. Knowing what not to put on the first page is just as important as what to put there. Why? Your agent or editor is reading page 1 after they've finished your hopefully gripping and polished novel synopsis, and your reader is reading page 1 after reading an intriguing cover blurb. You do not want to disappoint them on page 1. If your novel lets them down and does not fulfill the promise of your synopsis or your cover blurb, your reader is going to put it down and it's going to be fatal. They need to enjoy page 1. So you need to spend plenty of time on it, just as Avis suggested. So what do you not want on page 1 to avoid that fatal letdown? Throat clearing. Beginning novelists often cram a lot of backstory in the early pages. They're trying to understand their story, and they think this material is crucial so that the reader also understands the story of the world and the character's history. But backstory in large chunks is boring. It doesn't have the requisite tension or generate questions in the reader's mind. Usually because it's not in the story's present. It's in the past. It's done and it's over. And it will not hook the reader in the way that Wendy has described. Maybe you've skipped over it in novels that you've read. I know I have. So you need to save it for a different place in your novel, and probably in a bunch of tiny chunks instead of one big, huge info dump. It does not belong on page 1. Melanie, what are your thoughts about page 1?
I have thoughts. Thanks, Catherine. This is such a great question and an important one. When I go to the bookstore or the library or peruse online, I often know within the first page or within the first paragraph, and sometimes within the first sentence, if the writer knows what they're doing. Even if it's not a genre I read, the way the author constructs the very beginning tells me if they'll be able to hold my interest. So beginnings are of paramount importance. What is it that draws a reader into a book? That separates a great start from a ho-hum page 1. In a word, confidence. As a reader, I want to know from page 1 if the author can tell this story in a compelling way, that the writer knows exactly what the story is, that the author understands it and can distill it into the first paragraph without the reader even knowing that those first lines will describe the whole tale. For instance, the line, "I'm pretty much fucked," the opening of The Martian. Those few words tell the whole book. And with those few words, I am drawn into a genre I rarely read, science fiction. Consider, many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Ariano Buenda was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. The opening line of 100 Years of Solitude. This line describes the tale of a family and generations and the changes which alter the lives of the village. A very complex story down to its essence, and I am drawn into a genre I rarely read, magical realism. Consider, yes, of course, if it's fine tomorrow, said Mrs. Ramsay, the opening lines of To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. This trivial mention of the trip with its qualifier and resulting postponement of the trip is what sets the whole story in motion. My point is that in all of these examples, like those that Avis offered in her section, the author shows a confidence and an intimate knowledge of the essence of the story told in a way to draw a reluctant reader to take a chance and dive in. Write with confidence. Know your story. Thanks, Flamingos, for a great session on What's on Page 1. And thank you, fellow writers, for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our podcast and learned something you can take away with you to help you in your writing. Please send us your questions about writing to flamingoswritenow@gmail.com. No caps, no spaces. And you might see your question being talked about by such wonderful people. Join us next time when Flamingos Write Now will answer the question, are you a plotter or a pantser? Thank you.